Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Global Hydrogen Case Competition. We're excited to be back on the Edmonton Global stage for another amazing year. Thank you to everyone joining us here in person, as well as tuning in from around the world. My name is Branden Choi, and I'm the Vice President of Academic Affairs for the Interdisciplinary Consulting Association here at the University of Alberta. It's a pleasure to be one of your hosts for today.
And I'm Yisoo, Director of Academic Affairs at the ICA, and your co-host for today. So glad to have you here with us today. Before we get started, we would like to take a moment to recognize that we are meeting here today on Treaty 6 territory and Métis homeland. We acknowledge the deep connection of Indigenous people to this land, and we recognize the responsibility we carry to ensure a better future for all generations.
For those who may be new to the ICA, we are a student-led organization that helps connect students with real-world experience within the consulting industry. For the past 3 years, we have proudly partnered with Edmonton Global and DMG Events to host the Global Hydrogen Case Competition Finals right here at the Canadian Hydrogen Convention. This year, we're also excited to welcome 2 new partners, the Canadian Hydrogen Association and the University of Alberta's Future Energy Systems.
And however, this competition would not have been possible without the support of our generous sponsors. Thank you to our platinum sponsors, Liquide Canada, gold sponsors, Qualico Communities, Alberta's Industrial Heartland Association, and Deloitte. Silver sponsors, Emissions Reduction Alberta, and bronze sponsors, Apex Utilities. Let's give a warm round of applause to all the sponsors and organizers who made this competition possible.
Earlier this year, student teams were challenged to explore which of the 3 key Canadian sectors, mining, agriculture, or oil and gas, are best positioned to integrate hydrogen as a remote energy solution. They were asked to develop a realistic and innovative plan that takes into account economic, social, and environmental impacts, while also supporting business goals and advancing Alberta's transition to hydrogen.
At the heart of their analysis was this key question: which sector has the greatest potential to manage high capital expenditures for hydrogen integration as a remote energy solution? And today, our top 3 finalist teams will present their solutions, and tonight, one of them will take home the $10,000 grand prize at the award gala. We'd also like to take a moment to acknowledge Team Outcast, one of our finalist teams, who unfortunately could not be here with us in person due to the visa challenges. While we're disappointed they could not join us today, we're incredibly grateful for the effort and dedication they brought to this competition. And we have no doubt they'll be among the future leaders driving global emissions reduction forward.
But before we begin, I would like to take a moment to introduce our judges for today's competition. Judges, please give a warm wave when your name is called. We're pleased to welcome Brad Armstrong from Qualico Communities, Brent Lakeman from the Edmonton Region Hydrogen Hub, Liliana Zuleta from Emissions Reduction Alberta, and Taoufik Saidani from Air Liquide Canada. Thank you all for being here with us today. Now please join me in welcoming Taoufik Saidani, Key Markets and Government Affairs Manager at Air Liquide, to share a few opening remarks.
Good afternoon, esteemed guests, organizer, judges, and most importantly, our talented finalists. On behalf of Air Liquide, I extend our deepest gratitude for this opportunity and to be part of this significant event. For the 2nd consecutive year, Air Liquide is immensely proud to serve as platinum sponsor of this competition. Our commitment stems from a profound belief that hydrogen plays a pivotal role in the future of energy. As a company with a long-standing dedication to advancing hydrogen technologies, we recognize the transformative potential of hydrogen in addressing global energy challenges. Innovation has always been at the heart of Air Liquide mission. We are committed to developing solutions that contribute to the energy transition and the decarbonization of our planet. However, technological advancement alone are not sufficient. The fresh perspectives and innovative ideas brought forth by students worldwide are crucial in overcoming the challenge we face today, both nationally and globally. Your enthusiasm, creativity, and dedication are the driving force that will propel the hydrogen industry forward. For the 3 finalist teams, congratulations on reaching this stage. Your hard work and innovative solutions have distinguished you among a pool of talented participants. Regardless of today's outcome, your contributions are invaluable, and we eagerly anticipate the positive impact you will have on the future of energy. I would like to express my sincere appreciation to all participants for their dedication to pushing the boundaries of innovation. Thank you.
Thank you, Taoufik. Now we would like to invite Brent Lakeman, Executive Director of the Edmonton Region Hydrogen Hub, to say a few words.
Good afternoon, everyone, and on behalf of the Edmonton Region Hydrogen Hub, I'm thrilled to be here today to witness the continued growth of the global hydrogen case competition, and I'm honored to serve as a judge this year, my first time. If you're unaware, the Hub acts as an ecosystem convener, a policy advocate, and a systems integrator, working across sectors to accelerate real progress in decarbonization. We believe in building the future, and that means celebrating the people who will shape it. That's why we're so proud to support this competition, because it shows us some of the great young minds that will be shaping the future of hydrogen here and internationally. These students aren't just imagining what hydrogen could be, they're tackling real-world challenges that the hydrogen economy is facing today. These teams represent the next generation of hydrogen leaders, leaders who will help scale our systems, solve complex problems, and drive global change. It's a privilege to witness this incredible talent and innovation this competition draws from around the world. This competition reflects the very reason our region is at the heart of Canada's hydrogen economy. We believe in bold ideas, strong collaboration, and creating real-world impact. The Edmonton region is at the forefront of building a world-leading hydrogen economy. We have the infrastructure, the expertise, and the collaborative spirit needed to lead the way at the Hub, and our role is to bring these pieces together. To all the students here today, it's great to see your interest, ideas, and dedication to building a low-emission future. I look forward to seeing what you've developed, and now it's my pleasure to welcome our first presenting team, Team HydroCore. Please come to the stage.
Thank you, and hello, everyone. We are HydroCore. My name is Bella Wash, and alongside my partners, Chris and Andreas, we were tasked to answer the following question. Which sector is best positioned to manage high capital expenditures for hydrogen integration as a remote energy solution? We looked at 3 key areas to hydrogen's economy, contributing $39, $71, and $40 billion annually to Canada's economy. We used an evaluation criteria focusing on CapEx resilience, return on investment potential, funding incentives and availability of it, technological readiness, environmental leverage, and regulatory and market pressure. Let's start with agriculture. Given that they're spending $10.5 billion on capital expenditure and 4.4% with compound annual growth rate, hydrogen seems like a feasible solution. Current use cases include zero emissions generators, fuel cell powered machinery, and green fertilizers using ammonia. However, with almost $500 million in defunding incentives, farmers have proven that they have low interest in putting the high capital expenditures to invest in these projects. Moving on to oil and gas, this is a very large industry and oftentimes the largest target for decarbonization in the Canada region, specifically as it is the largest emitter in the nation. With a $40.6 billion capital expenditures, the spending is high. However, global demand has gone down over time, and it is the lowest at a 2.6% compound annual growth rate. There are current use cases in hydrocracking and desulfurization, and billions of dollars in government support and incentives for decarbonization. However, the industry has high infrastructure and is rigid. Specifically, within Canadian oil sites, the industry has very large costs, and this oftentimes eclipses the CapEx availability of their project. Additionally, oil and gas leaders have said that decarbonization really heavily impacts the cost competitiveness of their bitumen product. Moving on to mining, the oftentimes partner of the oil and gas industry in Canada, CapEx is still high at $20.3 billion and has the highest CAGR at nearly 7%. There's billions of dollars in government funding and availability, and there's also current use cases, specifically when it comes to diesel usage in the haul truck and on-site generation space, making abatement potential very high. In addition to this, while it does pose some short-term challenges, the long-term economic viability of this industry is high. So, putting all three of these together, mining outperforms the sectors, particularly within tech feasibility and environmental benefits, making it the most viable sector for hydrogen integration. While oil and gas does have the strongest CapEx resilience, the demand potential is held back given the high infrastructure and rigidity mentioned earlier. Additionally, agriculture underperforms in all of the sectors, specifically prohibited by their technological advancements and the capital capacity available. So, our recommendation is clear. The mining sector is the most ready to deploy hydrogen at scale, given its long-term economic attractiveness, sector readiness, and environmental and policy impacts that align with Canada's goals.
As Bella mentioned, the mining market's forward-looking guidance shows nothing but positives. According to the Natural Resources Agency, the total announced projects for the next 10 years amount to up to $632 billion in economic value for Canada. Furthermore, as the global demand for electrical vehicles, solar panels, and nuclear energy keeps on increasing, Canadian-rich minerals such as copper, nickel, uranium, and lithium will see drastic increases in demand. Furthermore, the mining industry has one of the highest CAGRs out of the heavy industries, meaning it is one of the fastest growing industries, needing billions of dollars in energy each year. If hydrogen can replace just up to 50% of the total diesel cost, this would amount to a $1 billion economic opportunity annually for hydrogen. And it is exactly that extensive reliance on diesel that makes hydrogen so attractive. Take, for example, last year, where $1.8 billion were spent for diesel in mining operations. With rising fuel costs and growing demand, this number is expected to increase all the way up to $3.8 billion by 2030. This is nearly doubling the operating expenses of the mining industry. And in an industry such as mining, where operating expenses and operating margins are supposed to be very high due to the high initial investment, this creates a very vulnerable environment in need of a solution and in need of finding a way to pivot. Now, the good news is that mining is no stranger to high capital expenditure. Take, for example, the average mining investment costs anywhere between $500 million and $3 billion. This is a huge number, but what really makes mining so CapEx resistant is its multi-decade lifespan, allowing for high infrastructure investments that bring a high return. Take, for example, Copper Mountain Mine. They had a $40 million investment in a trolley assist system, which now saves them up to 2.8 million liters of diesel each year. Hydrogen has the same potential with a short payback period of up to 3 to 5 years, assuming an LCOH of under $4 per kilogram. Now, it is worth highlighting that diesel has a lot of use cases in the mining industry. However, as you can see by the graph, these use cases are congregated into two specific things: haul trucks and power generation. Both of these account for up to 72% of the total haul truck and generator diesel use. And the better thing yet is that hydrogen has commercially ready and proven technologies that work as alternatives for these two things. Today, in this very exact building, that technology exists. Whether it's through the form of hydrogen fuel cells or hydrogen combustion engines, it exists. Take, for example, Anglo American's new haul truck, already being operated and piloted at the Magalakwana site in South Africa. Or take, for another example, the many hydrogen-powered generators being used to power remote grids, data centers, and military bases around the world. Now, I want to take a second and talk about the elephant in the room. Everybody in this building knows that one of the biggest issues with hydrogen is the transportation cost, specifically transporting it at a cost-effective, scalable, and safe way. So Chris, how are we going to transport hydrogen to these remote mining sites?
Enter liquid organic hydrogen carriers. These carriers enable the transportation of hydrogen using existing diesel infrastructure. In fact, companies like Ayrton Energy are already piloting this technology right here in Alberta. LOHC offers a drop-in ready solution. No new infrastructure required, no new systems, just a new molecule. Today, mining accounts for 86 million carbon emissions each year. that constitutes to 12% of Canada's total greenhouse gas emissions. However, by delivering hydrogen to these off-site solutions, thereby replacing the diesel fuel, we have the ability to abate 40 million tons of carbon emissions each year. That's the equivalent to the emissions emitted by the entire country of Denmark, and that's alongside the hundreds of millions saved by avoiding the carbon surcharge tax. The benefits are not just quantitative. Decarbonizing the mining industry closely aligns with several of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Critically, low and zero emissions vehicles are necessary for underground mining, where diesel and particulate emissions threaten the livelihoods of those workers. Furthermore, as the mining industry employs 11% of the indigenous community, many of whom actually live at or near these remote mining sites, cleaner technologies offer a pathway for healthier environments and local economic resilience. By investing in hydrogen infrastructure, these mining companies are able to create resilient jobs that align with the indigenous communities' beliefs, a traditional knowledge base, and sustainability values. Now let's talk a little bit about policy. Today, the Canadian federal government is incentivizing the build-out of hydrogen through funding and regulation. For example, we have the $8 billion Net Zero Accelerator Fund, the $1.5 Clean Fuels Fund, and the $500 million infrastructure for hydrogen refueling, all of which lower costs and stimulate the build-out of the hydrogen infrastructure that we all want to see today. Furthermore, tax credits, like the 30% investment tax credit, lower the cost of hydrogen retrofits, and regulatory policies, such as the 2040 mandate for zero emissions heavy-duty vehicles, create a clear regulatory picture. Mining needs to contribute to Canada's net zero future. Of course, there will be challenges which the entire industry faces. Access to hydrogen supply, volatility in hydrogen costs, and permitting and compliance remain challenges. However, as the industry emerges, as the industry matures, solutions will emerge, as evidenced by the brilliant work that's being done right here at this conference. Just yesterday, I had an extremely enlightening conversation with UL Solutions, who are focused on safety and compliance of hydrogen in all use cases, and companies like DTI Energy are able to retrofit existing diesel trucks with their diesel dual motor hydrogen technology, thereby making the transition easier. In conclusion, mining is the most operationally and financially feasible sector for hydrogen use cases. Through a strong macroeconomic tailwind, a $1 billion hydrogen opportunity, and long-term return on investment potential backed by both funding and incentives, hydrogen is not just a fuel, it's a strategy. Our long-term recommendation is to leverage federal funding, expand our early-stage pilot projects, and align on industry standards with subject matter experts on compliance, safety, and delivery to future offset.
And thank you so much. That's the time limit. We will now begin the 5-minute Q&A session.
Maybe I'll start with one question. Great presentation, very interesting approach and topic. You talk a little bit about incentives. Any thoughts on, how dependent upon those incentives, and is there concern about that dependency? We're having an election in Canada in a few days, and is there would there ever be a risk some of these incentives? I think you mentioned strategic investment fund. Governments can change, policies or programs can come and go a little bit. Does that create some risk?
Yes, of course. That's a great question. We're a team from the States, and everyone knows that with the new administration, overnight, these policies changed, and the look of hydrogen adoption in the United States changed automatically. So it is definitely a huge risk. However, as we showed earlier, diesel is projected to increase, and specifically in Canada, we have seen a lot of really great investments and a lot of attraction towards putting these government policies that aim to both decrease or decarbonize these industries, but also decrease the cost of hydrogen. And we believe that in terms of opportunity cost, it would be wise for mining companies to start looking at ways to implement hydrogen in the case that's most possible, meaning hydrogen would go down in price and diesel would go up. The opportunity cost, if they aren't ready to adopt hydrogen, will actually amount to more. However, it is worth noting that from a company's perspective, this is very risky. So we want to suggest that in a way to offset this risk and mitigate it a bit, this can be staged into phases, right? You can start by adopting potentially a hybrid solution or a dual solution, which currently today are more cost effective. So that's just, yeah.
Yeah, very good presentation. Thank you. My question is, what would be the main barrier for development of hydrogen utilization in the mining industry?
I think the primary cost barrier would be the initial high capex that's required, right? We saw that the numbers earlier. It costs maybe $25 million for a large mining project to implement these industries, and the payoff, as you mentioned, with these policy uncertainties, it's not necessarily right in front of us. So as a mining industry, you have to ingest that risk associated with implementing hydrogen with your diesel retrofits, and of course, dealing with the logistic headaches, right? However, as we mentioned, there are plenty of opportunities available to mitigate these risks. For example, we can look at alternative forms of energy, such as batteries or natural gas. It really is a case-by-case basis. And as a mining company, I encourage you to look at each individual mine and identify which solutions are the best suited for this specific use case, this geography, and the infrastructure that's in front of me.
Very good presentation, well done. I saw a number of hydrogen price, targeted hydrogen price of $4 per kg. What were your main assumptions to come up with that number?
Yeah, so we looked at very extensively, blue and gray hydrogen. This is the appendix I want you guys to see. No, actually it's this one. So liquid organic hydrogen carriers, this is a shipping analysis on the cost done by the European Union. And this technology, of course, it's new, it's immature, but if the demand gets there and these analyses are true, we're not looking at 8,000 kilometers of transportation, right? We're in Alberta, we have hydrogen at our back door. So these costs are absolutely competitive, and from a $4 LCOH standpoint, transportation makes the most of it. If we're not looking at green hydrogen specifically, and we're looking at blue or gray, these costs come down dramatically, and it's almost always the storage and transportation costs that are the biggest headaches and the biggest cost factors for hydrogen.
Thank you.
I'll also just add on the question that you mentioned earlier about kind of the governmental piece around it, because if you go to the slide that we have around government policy and incentive, there's a lot of work being done there. But from what we've seen across the sector, the path towards a net zero future is one that has been supported across the board, especially in areas like Edmonton and Alberta. Additionally, a lot of the funding initiatives that we did present are ones that have certain deadlines and certain dates like 2026, 2027. So by the time a new administration comes in, again, given that concern you had about the upcoming election, those projects will still be online and again have that kind of set in date, and whether they're going to be renewed or expanded, which in the past years we've seen a lot of these kind of initial funds being expanded. That's going to be the question, but as of right now, our reliance on the current numbers is something that we feel strongly about.
Thank you, Team HydroCore. Let's give them a round of applause. And next, please join me in welcoming Team Hydro Geniuses to the stage.
Good afternoon. We're Team Hydro Geniuses, and we're very excited to present to you Hygen, a unique approach towards energy usage. So, in summary, on-site hydrogen production via autothermal reforming can profitably meet mining energy demands, and has proven that the mining sector can support high capital expenditure on hydrogen-related projects. To show a more in-depth analysis, we'll use the following agenda.
So, the first step was evaluating which sector we will be analyzing. For this, we evaluated the main funds from the government of each of the sectors and their financial resilience based off incomes, investments, and operational costs. With this, we concluded that the agriculture and mining sector were the ones with the highest federal funding, with mining showing the best financial resilience out of the So now it's important also to evaluate their financial performance in the near future. For agriculture, we can see that there has been a decline on both number of farmers and the land in agricultural usage. For mining, on the other hand, there has been shown an increase on the last 4 years on total mining projects and potential investments. And on the other hand, with the oil and gas sector, there was a peak in revenue in 2022, followed by a decrease on the several 3 years, with an even estimated lower value on present year. So, to summarize all these key findings, mining shows the most promising opportunity for potential growth and investment. This was also evaluated in demonstrating the higher return of investment, and this is also due to the fact that more than 1/3 of mining industry CEOs reported being under pressure to meet environmental standards. So mining showed the best position to manage high capital expenditures with the hydrogen integration. And to meet these environmental standards, hydrogen can be used. Now, talking more about hydrogen, it has been well known that it is a great sustainable alternative compared to fossil fuels. This can be evaluated with the following benefits: that it's known that it reduces up to 20% of carbon emissions utilizing fuel cell technology. It has a 13% reduction in energy usage, and it can reduce greenhouse gas emissions up to 60% with carbon capture and storage. These benefits impact directly on the achievement of the following sustainable goals.
Hydrogen is becoming an important player in the decarbonization of mining. Its main applications are fuel cells that move heavy machinery through electricity produced by redox reactions, hydrogen diesels, hybrid systems that increase fuel engines' efficiency, and thermal energy production. Thermal energy production is the most demanding hydrogen application in mining, and it represents a breakthrough in terms of meeting the requirements of this demand of industrial processes with zero emissions. That is why the team has developed Hydrogen, an on-site hydrogen production through autothermal reforming with carbon capture and storage, with a strong recommendation of on-site hydrogen combustion for thermal energy generation. And how will hydrogen be produced? Through ADR. And although steam methane reforming is the most used and mature technology in the market, it was found after extensive calculations that ADR is a more profitable and efficient alternative. It is almost 30% cheaper in operational costs compared to SMR because it is an intensive process that is thermally self-sustained. And because there is one outlet stream that comes from the reactor, it is possible to capture up to 90% of the carbon dioxide produced. While the SMR, that has multiple streams, the range varies from 50 to 85%. And finally, this technology is ready for the market. There are current providers that use this technology to produce hydrogen, such as Topsoe, Shell, Linde, and Equinor. And the first advantage of on-site hydrogen production is the raw materials are already available at the mining sites. Therefore, there is an existing infrastructure that, if it is used, it will help the company avoid the impact of wildlife habitats, incur high costs, avoid the extensive government approvals, and the delay of the overall timelines construction. The second advantage is that hydrogen will be used right away. Therefore, the company can save big amounts of investments that is destined to the storage and distribution of hydrogen. And what happens after hydrogen is produced? It will be transformed into energy through direct combustion. It is the same chemical principle as natural gas combustion. However, this exothermic reaction does not produce any carbon dioxide in the process.
These trends clearly show hydrogen's potential to meet mining energy demand. And in order to showcase the mining sector's potential to manage high capital expenditure, we've developed the following plan, based only on the production and sale of hydrogen. So let's say that you want to cover Fort Hill's direct mining energy requirements. For that, you'll need a plant with the capacity of producing 674 tons of hydrogen per day. And based on the following considerations, the plan looks like this: 15-year horizon and 4 phases. First, you make investments and make contracts with the mine. Then you construct. After that, you operate and generate revenue, and at last, you can negotiate a contract renewal or an expansion with the mine. And this is what the project looks like. If you start investments this year, the break-even point will occur in 2031. And it was found through our analysis that hydrogen storage is one of the largest, if not the largest, operational expense in hydrogen projects, heavily impacting profitability. So avoiding this cost definitely makes the project more financially viable and attractive. So to compare hydrogen and natural gas, its main competitor in this context, we need to look at emissions. Canada is heavily penalizing emissions. which in a worst-case scenario, emissions from natural gas usage could amount to hefty fines. And although hydrogen production has its own emissions, it's important to mention that carbon capture and storage is considerably more expensive in the case of natural gas combustion, making hydrogen the most future-proof alternative. It is clean and has the potential to become even cleaner.
Understanding the opportunities and challenges is paramount for this project. For this, we analyzed several scenarios and possible risks regarding the project's financial performance. Our first sensitivity analysis regards the influence of the initial investment year, considering inflation and change in capital and material costs. As we see in the graph, we see that we compare the initial investment year with the internal return rate and the average profitability of the case. As we see, we take a key takeaway that a minimum of 11% in the IRR is manageable as a minimum target. This must be done no later than 2033. Nevertheless, the project is still profitable after, as we see in the graph. Then we analyzed the influence of the plant production scale. This was the purpose to see if the project is replicable and reliable regarding other energy-intensive mines that require more or less energy-intensive. So as we see on the graph, the higher the hydrogen production, the higher the IRR and the capital expenditures. The higher the profit due to the larger revenue margin. As we see this, the minimum required of a hydrogen production plant is 400 tons per day, meeting our minimum target required. Finally, we evaluated a specific scenario, the hydrogen market price, because we are aware that demand and competition may increase in the following years. We set 3 scenarios: our expected price, a price downside risk of 10%, and then we figured out the maximum price reduction allowed in our plant so it can still be profitable with our minimum target of IRR. This showing that the project is still feasible in here. After this, we analyzed several risks and mitigations regarding external risks that are not in our control and internal risks. This with the Porter methodology guidelines to understand different forces regarding the industry. And then we figure out the following mitigations. For this, after thorough analysis and deep evaluation, the mining sector has shown strong potential to manage high capital expenditures for hydrogen implementation as a remote energy solution via ITR and CCS technology. And on behalf of the Hydrogenesis team, we understand that this project is a key component for a future sustainable industry. Thank you for your attention, and we're open for further regarding questions.
Thank you to Hydrogenesis. We will now begin the 5-minute Q&A session.
Well, I'll go first. Excellent presentation. Congratulations, and thanks for being here. I noticed on your slide 14, you kind of skipped over that, and that was the key considerations, and I assume that was partly due to the time restrictions. So can you just kind of cover that briefly? What were some of the key considerations?
Yeah, so we adjusted the cost of hydrogen based on future projections. We saw that the cost of hydrogen is likely to decrease because of future demand and production. We also adjusted operational costs to future inflation projections. And we also modeled the incentives that Canada gives to these types of projects into our profitability analysis. And at last, we used CapEx and operational cost estimates according to research that we did, and adjusted these values with a scale of economics factor that we also found through research. Okay.
I'll ask a question. The project is founded on carbon capture and storage as well as the ATR technology. What are some of the challenges potentially around CO2 storage associated with these projects?
Well, can you go to, oh no, just give me a minute. So there is an advantage of this technology in terms of carbon capture. This technology is an intensive process that combines many units in the reactor itself, making it possible to have only one outlet stream. Therefore, that is an advantage, that there is a bigger carbon dioxide capture In case of the SMR, a problem is that there are many outlet streams in the process, and carbon capture has to become possible in many steps, not just in one.
How about the storage side?
Well, the storage was modeled in a way that you capture the carbon dioxide and it's transported via pipelines.
Okay.
And it's stored in the ground, on the ground.
So you're thinking using the CO2, moving it by pipeline at maybe a distance?
Yeah, 84 kilometers, according to the research with it. That's like the operational cost that we took into consideration.
84?
Yeah,
okay.
Because they say that in average, that's how long the carbon dioxide has to travel to somewhere that it can be stored at.
Okay, thank you.
So, yeah, very good presentation, thank you. And did you compare the use of electrolyzers against the SMR technology?
So we analyzed different types of hydrogen, blue, gray, green, but right now, since we wanted to make a project that's going to be a nearby investment, right now blue hydrogen is the best solution. Since green hydrogen right now it has a high price, since the electrolysis for green hydrogen is right now a very high costly procedure. So we wanted to first begin with the blue hydrogen. That's why we went through this direction.
Can I ask one more question?
Yeah, go ahead.
You focus on mining, oil sands mining. Do you see the same opportunity in other types of mining operations, let's say hard rock mining or different products?
Yeah, as long as it is energy intensive, the project will be profitable. Because we talked about the scale of economics, so we showed that the minimum production basis of hydrogen was 400 tons per day. So if there is a mine that requires as little as that, it can take on this project and make it profitable.
Yeah, so that's about 28,800 gigajoules per day, that's the amount of capacity of energy that it may be. But it's also considering that we need, the mining uses natural gas. So that's one of the main benefits. So we need to start, that's our main analysis regarding client-based selection. So yeah, are the hydrogen production and their energy intensive requirements, and also the natural gas usage.
I think we are running out of time, so thank you so much for listening to us. We are very excited to be here in Canada, and well, this was Team Hydro Geniuses. Thank you.
Thank you, Team Hydro Geniuses. And finally, please join me in welcoming Team SMNR Core to the stage.
Timer started? Hey judges, my name is Rayan. My teammates are Naomi and Maida. We're Team SMNR & Co. and representing hydrogen for Alberta and beyond. So, our problem is to decide which of Canada's 3 candidate sectors, mining, agriculture, or oil and gas, has both the financial muscle and the operational fit to take on the high CAPEX switch to hydrogen for remote off-grid energy. In other words, who can fund it, deploy it, and realize a positive ROI while cutting emissions. After a full comparison, oil and gas is the best starting point. These sites already use the most diesel. They're built for high CAPEX projects, and they're sitting on top of the resources and infrastructure needed, like cheap natural gas and access to carbon storage pipelines. Our strategy is simple. Build on-site hydrogen hubs using proven steam methane reforming technology with carbon capture. These hubs power generators, steam systems, heavy equipment, cutting diesel use and emissions fast. Later, we swap in methane pyrolysis to make clean hydrogen without any CO2 at all. Now, to decide where hydrogen makes the most sense, we started by looking at all three sectors side by side. Now, mining is capital intensive, but extremely risk averse. It's hard to be the first mover there. Agriculture, on the other hand, consumes a lot of diesel, but it's very fragmented. So many small farms and low capex and grid-connected setups. Now, oil and gas stands out here. It is already spending over $40 billion a year in capital, runs very remote operations, and has strong access to lending and bonds. These sites burn nearly 3 billion liters of diesel every year, and they have the scale and the financial muscle to take on such high-scale, high-cost transitions like hydrogen. Now, these slides show which sector is the most impactful place to start. When we compare energy use and emissions across sectors, oil and gas dominates, using nearly half of all industrial energy and contributing over 30% of GHG emissions. Focus on the right, your right side graph. Over 90% of the energy at a remote oil and gas site comes from diesel. This is a problem and also an opportunity. Now, by targeting just this sector, we can tackle 75% of Alberta's off-grid diesel problem in one move. Now, which sector has the financial strength to lead the hydrogen transition? Now, you can look at the heat map on your left side of the PowerPoint. We compare all three sectors across 5 important financial indicators. And oil and gas stands out across the board once again. It has the highest diesel user per site, around 40 million liters per year, which means the biggest cost-saving potentials because they're not spending that money on bringing in diesel. It also offers the strongest margins and the most generous funding support, with ITC coverage up to 37.5%. Most importantly, it would have the fastest payback. If you zoom onto the bottom graph here, we see how this translates in real dollars. Remote oil and gas sites spend up to $3.5 million a year just on powering their operations, the smaller ones, that is. So from both a financial and operational lens, oil and gas gives us the biggest returns. Now, one of the biggest barriers to hydrogen adoption historically has been cost. If you look at the top left chart, you'll see that oil and gas can tap into the largest pool of funding for hydrogen projects in Canada. This includes programs like the Clean Fuel Fund and the Canada Growth Fund, which together offer over $25 billion in combined resources. Now, the heat map brings everything together. We evaluated all 3 sectors across 5 core criteria: CAPEX, capacity, access to funding, diesel displacement, financial strength, and payback speed. So if the goal is to find the sector that can deploy fast, deliver savings, and cut emissions at scale, oil and gas is a clear strategic winner here.
Thank you, Ryan. So hydrogen is not a new shiny toy in the oil and gas industry. Refineries have used hydrogen for decades now. And at remote operation sites, on-site produced hydrogen actually beats diesel in terms of cost because we don't need to do the delivery part, hydrogen already there on site, so which is very painfully expensive if you use diesel. Additionally, hydrogen slashes in terms of greenhouse gases emission, noise, and maintenance. However, hydrogen is not that common right now just because of the very expensive upfront investment required. So blue hydrogen offers a lot of advantages, including up to 90% of greenhouse gas cut, and also clean energy tax credit. It has very high energy density per unit. However, there are 2 hurdles that remain. First of all is making it, and second of all is moving it. So for making it, to produce hydrogen, it requires a lot of water, and for moving it, hydrogen is very leak-prone, very flammable, and it is tiny. So moving or transporting hydrogen is extremely dangerous, extremely costly. So to mitigate these challenges, we come up with a strategy. So for the short term, we want to deploy a blue hydrogen hub. And for the long term, we want to employ methane pyrolysis for hydrogen production. So by deploying blue hydrogen hub on site, on oil and gas sites, or right beside the oil and gas sites, we can take advantage of the natural gas, first of all, and second of all, we don't need to transport the hydrogen. So hydrogen produced on site and is also being used on site. We can also leverage the existing infrastructure that oil and gas has to store the excess hydrogen, such as salt cavern, pipelines, or even the depleted gas fields. And last but not least, oil and gas is already an expert in carbon capture. So by forming partnership with them, we can leverage their expertise, their knowledge, their supply base to boost our carbon capture. And for the long-term strategy, methane pyrolysis are still a few years away from being commercially viable. However, they offer three main benefits that we cannot ignore. First of all, the final result of methane pyrolysis is hydrogen and its byproduct, solid carbon. So for solid carbon, it has market value, and you don't need to waste money in carbon capture. Second of all, it also doesn't need water to produce hydrogen. And last but not least, it is really flexible in terms of scaling, so making it a very ideal candidate for decentralized hydrogen production. So if it will open doors for us in the future if we want to enter all the industry, including mining, agriculture, and transportation, because of these energies require their needs for hydrogen is very scattered. And to make this a reality, we come up with 3 different applications for hydrogen, including hydrogen fuel microgrids, powerhouses on drilling rigs, and hydrogen fire steam and heat for thermal oil recovery. So all 3 of these applications already, 2 of them already fully commercial, and the last one is in pilot phase. So that's why by leveraging these technology, we can make oil and gas, we can step into oil and gas and open the door before other industries.
Thank you. Now let's put this vision into a real-life example. Considering the Thermon facility operated by ConocoPhillips and Total Energies, we are heading towards by integrating blue hydrogen directly on site. We can tap into existing gas lines and CCS infrastructure, which would replace diesel and cut down carbon dioxide emissions by 90%. Now let's talk about the numbers. With on-site hydrogen, Thermon can slash fuel costs by half from going $85 million to 43 million CAD per year. Now, even accounting for the capital cost of $160 million, payback period is just over 3 years with net savings of $52 million. Modular SMR, which is a TRL-9, can be deployed today, integrated with natural gas feeds and the Alberta carbon trunk line. And long-term, we transitioned into methane pyrolysis, which is zero carbon dioxide output, so we have the same input, the same layout, but just a different output. No major reworks needed. Our solution is directly advanced for sustainable goals, the clean energy, industrial innovation, and responsible production. Now, here's how we get here. With 2025, we secure sites and partnerships. By 2026, we deploy our first 20-ton per day. Next 2 years, we are expanding 50-ton hubs, and by 2030, we have hydrogen cheaper than fossil fuels and selling carbon into sectors like tires and batteries. Now, we have enablers and barriers, but we have ITC and incentives, proven tech, and rising carbon prices. To mitigate our barriers, we have, for ITC, for permitting delays, we focus on pre-permitted SAGD, carbon policy with 30% fallback ITC model, with methane pyrolysis alongside SMR units, dual fuel, and with co-development with fuel service partners. Thank you, and Alberta has what it takes to lead the energy transition forward, and we're here to strategize it. Thank you, we're ready for questions.
And thank you so much, and we will now begin the 5-minute Q&A session.
Well, I'll start. First of all, I just want to say I've been doing this for 3 years now, and these are probably 3 of the best presentations that I've seen the entire time. So in terms of the quality of the graphics and the presentation. So congratulations to you and the other 2 groups as well. I did have a question. I'm interested in the methane pyrolysis too. I think there's a market, but I've been told that it's not there yet. So if you could expand on that a little bit. You talked about tires, I think, and batteries and that sort of thing, but what research did you do into the future of how we develop that demand for black carbon or ash or whatever it turns out to be?
So for methane pyrolysis, for the black carbon, it's actually already being used in, I think, producing energy. And also that because we talked to a few experts, and they say that right now the market for us is not big, but after methane pyrolysis is actually being deployed, then they will drive the market a lot. And
So from our research, we know that there have been pilots done for methane pyrolysis that have been successful in terms of they know that at this point it's going to be commercially viable, and I believe they just started building a commercial facility for it, right?
So they're building facilities for Shell, Nutrien. They're into building their hubs, and that's what we kind of also went into with our implementation plan. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll ask a similar one on the methane pyrolysis. You talked about switching over from SMR with carbon capture and storage to pyrolysis. The timeline seemed fairly short as far as kind of 27, 28, I think. Any comments on sort of the capital that's needed for those CCS projects and that duration of the capital, because these tend to be fairly large-scale investments?
Yeah, if we go into our appendix, yeah, we kind of have a more detailed implementation plan of the detailed implementation plan. Sorry. Sorry about that. Yeah, so that kind of like goes more into we have our KPIs, success check, key movements, and if we want to go into our financial calculations for our CAPEX, we have a CAPEX calculation considering the current ITC rate and credit, and which we also have a 10-year plan just following that as well.
And for this one, we do an example of 50 ton per day for blue hydrogen hub. And the CCS CapEx here is actually for 5 days storage of the production. So it's for 250 tons.
Thank you. I might have one more if there's no other questions. Sorry. It's okay. Back to my favorite topic of CO2 storage. You talked about tying into the Alberta Carbon Trunk Line or maybe trucking the CO2. Have you sort of explored the CO2 hubs or the distances involved?
Yeah, so we were looking more of, so with the case study that we presented, it's with the Sermont. We also were going from the Shell and Nutrien hubs that they are going to be putting forward. So as they have put forward and the timeline that they have, that's what we also added in our case study with the research that we did, yeah.
Okay, so you're showing the distance from those sites up to some of the oil and gas or the remote sites?
Yes, we're trying to make sure that our hubs are right exactly where the oil sites are, so there isn't much energy and cost that's lost within transportation. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
And in the case study that we did, we also include an oil and gas site that already have CCS in there, so that when we produce hydrogen for them, then we can leverage the CCS technology they have right there. But in the future, we will look into that.
Thank you, Team SMR & Co. What an excellent series of presentations from our finalist teams today. Let's give them one last round of applause. And just like that, we have come to the end of Global Hydrogen Case Competition. What an incredible afternoon filled with big ideas, bold thinkings, and global collaboration. A huge thank you to our partners, judges, sponsors, and everyone behind the scenes who made it today possible. We truly could not have done it without you.
And a big thank you to everyone who joined us today, both in person and online. We hope you enjoyed today's event as much as we did. Just a quick reminder, the winning team will be announced tonight at the Canadian Hydrogen Convention Awards Gala. If you're not attending the gala, be sure to follow Edmonton Global and the ICA on social media for updates. But don't go too far. Coming up next on the Edmonton Global stage at 3:05 is the Edmonton Unlimited Hydrogen Venture Showcase. You won't want to miss it. Thank you everyone once again, and stay tuned for tonight's exciting conclusion.